We've been excited to be a part of this story the last couple of weeks, and someone that's been there for a very, very long time helping build Canada up to this point is joining us next. Our insider, brought to you by Don Valley North Lexus, where you can expect excellence online and in the showroom. Visit DonValleyNorthLexus.com. It's Michael Bartlett, Canadian basketball CEO. Congratulations
Yes, indeed.
on an incredible run at the FIBA World Cup, and welcome back. I know it's been a little bit of a journey to get back home, but we're glad to have you on the radio, and congrats on the success.
Yes, thank you, and good morning, Ailish and Jesse. Yeah, it was fun coming through customs last night. If they asked if there was anything to declare, I said, yeah, one precious medal.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, was there
so good.
I don't know what time you landed at, but sometimes there's a little welcoming committee. Did anything special happen at the airport with the medals?
Yeah, I know a lot of the guys came through on different flights, so there was a good contingent for them. I came through solo, jumped in a car, and headed straight home to Stratford, and it was great to see the family last night.
Well, congratulations again. Just an amazing performance by the men's team over in Indonesia and then Philippines. Like, when the final buzzer sounded, what were the emotions that were
Not
going
the one
through?
to push it OT.
Yeah.
I love that one.
That one. Well, we can get your thoughts on that one too. But when the game was officially over and you knew that Canada had won the bronze over a rival like the United States, what was going through your mind?
I'll actually say it was just pure joy, and because of the way that overtime went, we almost had kind of a 30 to 40 second head start of realizing, like, oh my goodness, like this is happening. So being able to collect with the support staff that were all kind of filing out of the locker room, and sharing hugs and joy with each other, it was actually very different than the game against Spain, which was tense right until the last minute. Or the last second, in fact, and the flood of relief that came from that one. That one was very emotional because we had punched our ticket to the Olympics. That really was our stated goal from day one. We did not ever and do not ever want to play in a last-minute qualifying tournament. Canada deserves better. Our program deserves better. So then counter that to the bronze game, it was just pure elation and joy, and squashing the giant of the U.S. in the process. It just adds another moment for Canada, another moment for the program, and we were just thrilled.
Yeah, it's always nice to beat the Americans, especially now that they all want to bring their superstars over. I think you started that, and
nice, eh?
and
That's
the
nice.
the Avengers
Bring it
maybe headed to Paris. But that moment you celebrate, you mentioned it, you kind of got the first monkey off the back earlier in the tournament, beating Spain and clinching. How much of a relief almost, or how much of a clear head did the guys have for the rest of the tournament, knowing that one goal had been accomplished and they really only had one left, and that was to at least medal and at least get there on the podium?
Yeah, I think, it sunk in for all of them that part one and the one that we talked about from the beginning. I think back to a meeting that we had in Las Vegas with the players shortly after the crushing defeat against the Czechs in Victoria, when we reset the table and created this core strategy. At that time, we talked a lot about the path to Paris and what we have to do to qualify. And, we've been talking about it ever since that day, about what qualifying for Paris needed to look like. But it was actually in that meeting that Melvin Najim said, while we're at it, I agree we should qualify for Paris, but we should just go win a World Cup medal too. So, the guys are wired differently. They're very focused. In fact, after that game against Spain, there was no celebration, no party. We were all relieved. We go back into the team room afterwards, and they're just all playing Mario Kart, getting ready for the flight to Manila the next day, right? So they were just like, okay, check, done, moving on, and they were very focused throughout the entire tournament, and they were so excited to get a chance to play the U.S., some of their teammates, some of their rivals in the league, and then to get that monkey off our back too with a big win against that program. It was just everything these guys had hoped for.
And they're not the only Canadian team to have success in the basketball program as part of Canada basketball. Like the 5-on-5 teams, so you tweeted, competed for a medal in 9 of 10 tournaments since October 2022. So in your role with Canada basketball, like, how best do you capitalize on the success that Canada basketball is currently undergoing? And with all the eyeballs that were on this tournament, like, what's the best way that you guys can capitalize on that?
Well, we've got a great opportunity to unify the country through this sport. I was with Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment for a decade before joining Canada Basketball, and I saw firsthand what the Raptors championship did for the country. We've tried to take that baton. The Raptors and MLSE are great supporters of Canada Basketball, and we're trying to kind of take that baton and torch from them to unify Canada through winning. And we know we've got a real shot when we go into Paris. Our men's and our women's 5-on-5 team and, most expectedly our women's 3x3 team will all compete for medals. We got a great note from David Shoemaker at the COC saying how excited he is to have basketball be a lead story for Canada in Paris. I think back to just a young person growing up myself, what the Olympics meant to me, how it shut down my household for 2 weeks every time that Canada took to the stage somewhere. And, basketball was never a focal point of that story. I remember being on the living room floor when Ben Johnson won and being on the living room floor the next day when they took the medal away. Like, I remember those moments. I remember where I was when Sid scored the goal, when the women won soccer gold. There's so many Olympic moments that are iconic for the country. And when we think about what basketball can be for the country in this Olympics and then coming up in LA 28, this is just the beginning. And, brands certainly that want to jump on board with us, it's my job certainly to make sure that we have brands that partner with us so that we can invest back in basketball and in the winning and in the growth of the game. This is a great time to get on board because we've got a real shot to unify the country and do something on the world stage.
Yeah, Canada basketball is no longer just a fun story, right? There's more expectations now. There's a Olympic gold medal, silver medal, bronze medal on the table. There's continuing to raise the ceiling. And I wonder for you, with this Olympic berth, with the FIBA World Cup medal, and with some of the biggest names in basketball going to be on your team, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has really, he's been someone we've followed, but I think he's a global name now. Hopefully Jamal Murray is a global name that people will recognize and more and more, and of course Dylan Brooks. But I wonder for you how this changes expectations, how you continue goal setting to not just show up, but to medal and to continue to grow this program, specifically next year at the Paris Olympics.
Well, and, you use the word change, Ailish. It doesn't actually change the expectation at all. For the last 24 months, our ambition and expectation has been just this, to be a podium team each and every time we compete internationally. And that's our men's, our women's, our 3x3, all the age group teams. That's what we expect of ourselves. So the expectations don't change. I think maybe more of Canada wakes up to the fact that we have this expectation of ourselves and they should share in that expectation of us. Ultimately, the promise that we're making to our athletes too is when they compete on the global stage for Canada, it's an opportunity for us and them to make them household names across the world. And I think, that promise was kept for Shai and Dylan and Lou and so many others. And now head coach Jordi Fernandez. Like, these are names that, because of their investment in time in Canada basketball, these are now names that are known across the world. And quite frankly, probably names that are known more to Canadians too. And that's a promise that we make to our athletes, that we want to give them brag-worthy experiences, but then also give them brand-building opportunity too.
Yeah, we've heard so much about culture. And when we had Rowan Barrett on, that was one of the things that he really focused on. And I mean, it's no disrespect to the players who tried time and time again to have this level of success playing for Canada in these international tournaments, but obviously this is a high watermark in the last almost 100 years. So when did the culture shift? When did that begin, and how did you guys go about trying to change the culture with this team?
Well, I think, we talk about ambition, and the board of Canada Basketball is filled of individuals and business leaders from across Canada, that many of them entrepreneurial, many of them see what basketball can be for this country, and they've given the organization permission to maybe act a little bigger than we are before we're even that size, and invest a little more than we have before we even have it. And, ultimately, winning is going to churn more opportunity for us to realize some of those financial gains and commercial opportunities so that we can invest back into the program. But it was kind of like the board took the handcuffs off of the organization and said, this is our time. We know this is the time now. We cannot be an organization that waits for the winning in order to spend like we're winning. So we have invested significantly more in our men's and women's and 3x3 programs over the course of the last few years, but we've invested it in the areas that are culture defining and competitive advantage defining. So that can be the length of training camp, the conditions of training camps. Just think of the scrimmage games that we had before this Olympic run, playing against Germany and Spain, before we compete against the best. We're practicing against the best. And these are all things that are culture defining because our athletes see this as an investment in their time. It's not just us asking them to put time into us. It's us investing in that opportunity for them too. And whether it be our women who finished fourth in the World Cup, our men who now have bronze, those athletes also go back into their professional season after those runs, having had a great physical and personal and psychological experience. So they end up having a better season as a result of it too. And that's part of the value prop that we're delivering as well.
Talking to Canadian basketball CEO Michael Bartlett. So we had Rowan Barrett on, as Jesse mentioned last week, and he said this was right after clinching the Olympic berth that he was already getting calls for sponsors, already getting scheduling for this next couple months in terms of games. So what happens now? Like, what do you guys focus on? Obviously the on-court performance, but as you mentioned, trying to get this team ready for Paris. Is there scheduling? Is there big meetings that have to happen before, it's already around the corner, it feels like?
Yeah, certainly. And that's actually part of the benefit of being on the ground with the team for the last number of weeks. We now have a bit of a blessing of choice at this point. We have had so many invitations brought forward to us by other teams around the world that want to train and prep with us for exhibition games. So now it's a matter of us deciding what we want our prep to look like. We're having the same conversations with our women's program. We anticipate that they will qualify out of the OQT in February. So we're trying to match those schedules, ultimately looking to do some really fun stuff with some games domestically and then flying over to Europe and playing some high quality prep games over in Europe too. So it's a planning process that we hope to have done no later than February once we know the women have punched their ticket and have all those dominoes lined up. But it is a benefit of choice now. We don't really have to make too many calls. People are calling us. We're seeing it on the sponsor side. We're seeing it on the preparatory competition side. And I'll say it was really fun, the response that we got from my counterparts, presidents of other federations from around the world, how excited they were for Canada basketball to achieve this because they see it as good for the global game as well. Whether it be a tough loss by France, their team president couldn't have been more gracious and excited for what this meant for our program. They've had their time. They know they'll have their time again, and they knew that that loss to Canada, although was a tough one for them, was good for the global game. And again, same with our friends in Spain and even our friends at the United States. They're very gracious along the way. And I think there's great opportunity for us to have some pre-Paris prep games with each of those nations, either home or away.
This team had a lot of NBA commitments, but there were some NBA players that decided to pass, whether it's for rest purposes or whatever that may be. Now having seen this team work through the grind of accomplishing what they accomplished, how are you guys going to navigate if there are players that took a pass on this tournament but maybe want to be a part of the Olympic run? Because I would imagine that could lead to some difficult decisions that may have to be made.
Yeah, certainly. Jesse, when we created the core strategy, the definition of core and being on the core wasn't handcuffed to necessarily playing in a window or in a competition. We recognize that certain, body injuries, rest, contracts sometimes can get in the way, but it's being part of the environment, the culture, the learning process and training camp, which was really definitive on whether or not you were committed to the core. So an athlete like Jamal Murray, Corey Joseph, Kevin Pangos, O'Shea Brissett, they were all in our training camps through our windows, and while couldn't answer the call necessarily for this competition, they're still considered part of the core. So ultimately, Coach Jordy and Rowan we'll have some difficult decisions to make. Those decisions will be based on our competitive outlook and, what we need to look like in order to be the best at the Olympics. But certainly the athletes that are in our core consideration, our core 16, continue to be the ones that we're focused on. We know there will be others that are interested, and that's great. This is, again, a program that has wanted people interested for a long time. So we're not discouraged by that. But ultimately, those that have made the commitment to us, we believe very much in a two-way promise. They've made promises to us, and we've got to keep those promises to them. So there will certainly be some tough decisions. But I'll say this group of 12, they formed a team really quickly. Mm-hmm. They became brothers through experience, a shared experience together. And the most fun I had in the entire tournament was watching them, the 12 of them in the locker room together, just celebrate each other. And in fact, I don't know, I think Kelly referenced it in the post-game interview. The game goes to overtime off that dagger three from Mikal Bridges. Was it Bridges? Yeah, I'm still blanking. And in the huddle, one of the players says, "Guys, how lucky are we to have 5 more minutes to be on the court together?" What a great response. And as soon as I heard that, somebody texted me, they're like, "Oh my God, that was gutting." I'm like, "No, we got this. I have no doubt that we have this." Because as soon as I heard the team say that to each other, I knew that this was something special.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
We've heard a lot. I think the FIBA broadcast helped us get a little bit closer to the team as well. They put the mic right in there, and we heard a lot from Jordi Fernandez. And I think the decision to move on with him initially, with Nick Nurse moving off, we talked to Rowan Barrett. He said it was an almost immediate, like, okay, let's get this guy in conversations. We really want to see what he can do. And it aged great. Clearly, the first couple months or even 2 months that he's had to build a team, to get this team together and create a culture that was already, partially instilled. Seemingly, he was the right man for the job. I wonder what you make of Jordy's opportunity at the FIBA World Cup, how he became part of our conversation as somebody that motivated this team so quickly and seemed really well respected by the players already.
Yeah, he's he's one of us for sure. Like if you could, I think he'd change his. Yeah, he's a proud Spaniard, but he could hold the culture of a Canadian passport in his back pocket pretty easily. He's Canadian through and through in the way that he approaches life. I think ultimately he understands athletes. He understands the need of how to communicate and get the most out of athletes, how to be honest with them, but then also how to nurture them. He deflects often and calls Shea, the greatest connector in the locker room. Jordy's an amazing connector. And whether that be with the frontline staff who's doing the laundry, to, Rowan, to myself, to, the star athlete, to, Trey Bell-Haynes, who's going to play, 2-3 minutes a game. He knows how to connect with everybody. He was very, very, very focused on preparing this team to be their best. He's kind of a no ego amigo as well. Didn't really want to be in the limelight, but I think Canada should be very proud of their adopted son in Jordy. I know actually, happy accident, the Raptors are hosting Sacramento Kings out in Vancouver for an NBA preseason game. Jordy's going to get the loudest applause in the entire building, I think. He's certainly one of us, and proud to get to know him and become a friend of his over the last 6 weeks as well.
Last one for you, Michael, this morning. Appreciate your time, especially on the jet lag. Dylan Brooks, definitely a story that I think has won over a lot of Canadian hearts. His maybe narrative shift, the way that he put this team on his back, plays with a lot of pride, plays with a lot of energy and grit. Dylan Brooks, maybe even the reason that LeBron James and co. want to come to the Paris Olympics next year. I think he put them on notice a little bit, and they're going to get their team together. But the story of Dylan Brooks, I think we don't get the full perspective. We're not there on the ground. We're not, sharing this story with him as close as you are. But him as a person, him as a player, like, it feels like we got a good one, and we should be really proud that he plays for Canada and not any other team.
Yeah, we certainly should. And, there's a few instances. I'll say, like, the Philippines basketball culture loves the LA Lakers. Like, there's more Lakers jerseys than any other jersey outside of LA that I've ever seen. And they would routinely boo him, the minute that he got the ball, the minute he was introduced. Mm-hmm. Hearing them cheer MVP for him at the end of the game was so amazing. Here's the take on Dylan and what the rest of the world didn't get a chance to see. First guy out of the locker room so that he can stand in the tunnel and do his personal, high five with every guy as they come out to get ready. Leads the team out onto the court. The first guy to be rallying the team and talking in the huddle and, setting some defensive, tidbits and suggestions for guys. Like, he's just all team. And the organizations and people that pour their positive energy into him, he gives it right back 200%. He was also the one, I think, he had the most friends and family there. He was so proud of getting this opportunity and had friends come, to Jakarta and then also out to Manila So it was just wonderful to see how he bled and wore the Canadian flag on his sleeve, his heart on his sleeve throughout the entire tournament. And I think Canada's got one to fall in love with for decades.
Yeah, sure. I can't wait to see how he follows it up at the Paris Olympics. It's been a really wonderful story being able to cover Canada's run at the FIBA World Cup. Congratulations again. Yeah, keep that bronze medal in sight because hopefully you can add another one next year to the podium in Paris. Thanks so much for coming on, and congrats once again, Michael.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.